Okay, next we have to talk about the one table calc to rule them all. We have Layla Mannheim here. Layla is an analyst with the Business Analytics Department at Ready Logistics, a transportation logistics company. She holds a master's degree in library and information science with a focus on user-centered information design. Well, that just sounds fascinating to me. Um, Layla is passionate about enabling people to find and communicate insights and the world's biggest dot plot evangelist. All right. She is the co founder of Phoenix, Arizona's United by Data Group. So she's the co founder of Phoenix, Arizona's United by Data Group. Let me say that with the correct. With the correct pronunciation there. So Layla's going to talk about one table calc to rule them all. And that could help you solve, I think, almost every other table calculation. So Layla is going to give us a demo. So Layla, I'll just hand it right over to you. I am really looking forward to this session. Thank you for coming on.
Awesome intro and for getting the name right.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Just get the share screen going, hopefully. Okay, technology's out of the way. Can you guys just see the presentation?
Yep.
Okay, great. So thank you again. I am really, really excited to share this trick for table calculations with you. I feel like I've gotten a lot out of the community, and this trick has helped me a lot, so I hope that it'll help you guys as well. So this is how I used to pretty much feel about table calculations. I've been using Tableau for a little over 2 years, but up to maybe 6-8 months ago, I still felt like sometimes table calculations worked, sometimes they didn't, and I wasn't sure why or why not. And so there was always a component of mystery and some frustration. And so then I discovered this trick, and my Tableau life changed a lot after learning this trick. And I really actually now think table calculations are fun in like a slaying the dragon type of way. But I even find myself sometimes using table calculations when and telling myself not to, that I'm going overboard. So how Tableau renders the data and kind of how aggregation happens is really key to understanding why and how this trick works. And so I know everyone is not beginner here for the most part, so I will try to just keep it very high level. So let's look at our favorite data set of all, and just kind of looking at sales per region. And so just kind of thinking about if we suspend our belief for a little bit and say that the Superstore is an actual real store with real customers out there in the real world, how does a sale actually happen out there in the real world? How does an order happen? So you have someone from somewhere who buys something with money, of course, maybe not dollars. And so basically you have, this is your customer field. This is your kind of customer location, so region, state, city, etc. This is your products, and this is your sales amount. And so using that, so what happens when we click on that view underlying data, the true data looks like this. So when Andy places an order, we will get a row in our data set that is for each product in his order. But then when we are, actually analyzing the data, usually we wouldn't look at just Andy's order. we wouldn't look even at customer by customer usually. We would probably want to see a higher level summary. So if we say want to look at sales per product category, we're looking at the aggregated data. So now one of these rows is basically summing it up, and it's for now it's adding up multiple rows. So, right, one row now it can be up to 1,000 or even 1,000,000 rows. And so what you have to keep in mind is the Tableau doesn't really care if your actual real data is thousands of rows in terms of what Tableau sees in the world of that worksheet. It is just a data set with 4 rows. And you can actually think of it, if you are from the programming world, as 4 vectors of 1 element each. And so if you add a little bit more complexity to your view, like say you add a dimension to the columns that is region, then now every one of these cells is the sum of the sales for the intersection, right? So for chairs in central region. And so now what Tableau sees is 4 vectors again, but now there are 4 elements each. So how does this relate to actually writing table calculations? So basically what you have to keep in mind is that Tableau is, by doing a table calculation, you are looking up an aggregation beyond the single row. So you're looking up the aggregated values in multiple rows or columns, depending on your view. And so then when you are writing your table calculations, to really, I think, get past that hurdle, you need to think not in terms of how many or which rows you think you're going to need to go through in your original data. You need to basically look at it from Tableau's perspective of what Tableau would think of as the rows and columns in your view. So just a quick example of probably one of the most basic table calculations, percent of total. So you basically just have 2 components to it, your sum of sales and then divided by the total sum of sales. So if we were, for example, trying to look at the sales for the subcategories as a percentage, so our question is kind of like, what is the percent of all sales that the chairs or the tables category is contributing to? So basically going down this way, it would be 100%. And so then we can see that the sum of sales is basically, it's not even technically a table calculation. It is a row level calculation. It's just going to be your aggregated sum for that particular row or that particular cell. And then your total is adding up the sums for everything in your window of your table calculation. In this case, it is 4 rows. So what makes index so magical, in my eyes anyways, is basically that it is Tableau's row counting function. And so it lets you see how Tableau is seeing your data in the world of your worksheet. It lets you see kind of how it's counting and where it's restarting that count. So it's basically sneaking a peek under the hood and really making sure that it's not a guessing game anymore when you set your compute width. So I am going to show you kind of my workflow and some examples in my workbook over here. And please let me know if you can't see the workbook. Okay, so this is basically that crosstab, except we don't have sales anymore. We just have the crosstab of we have the product subcategories here. And so all I'm going to do is go in here and type index. And then I am going to put in the text. And you can see now that it's counting down this way. Now, if I was going to, it doesn't make sense in this view, but if I if I was doing cell, for example, it doesn't count more than one anymore. So you kind of really see what it's doing. And so I made a prettier version of this that really lets you see easily where it starts and where it ends with a pink. And hopefully, uh, so I did create a kind of reference that I'll show you in a minute, but I would encourage you guys to just play around with this, drag in more dimensions to the columns, to the rows, um, and then you can kind of really play around and really, that's how I feel like I learned a lot. So I use this to figure out how to do really tough calculations, but I also use this to just mess around with it and understand how the different compute widths work. So if we were going to drag, say, region, I'm seeing a lot of chats. I hope that, can you guys see this okay?
Oh yeah, we're all
Okay.
chatting about how beautiful it is
Oh,
and how informative,
okay.
beautiful and
All
informative.
right. Well, that's great then, I guess. So, so we pulled in the region, and then you could see now a little bit more clearly that it's starting up here, ending here, and then restarting again. So if we were going to say, change it to table across, and then this one is the index that I'm using for the coloring. So it's a little clunky to change it around, but you can see that now it is starting and counting across and restarting with every row. So this is the kind of poster looking reference guide that I created, and it has basically a lot of the more common variations. Uh, so I created this kind of, so I wouldn't have to necessarily try out different combinations, and just because I thought it would be really pretty and cool. And so you can see on here, I used the lines as well with the formatting, so you can really easily see this one is counting down, and then it's, you know, restarting it's not restarting every column, but it's kind of going in that direction. And then you can see some more complicated ones where uh, you know, just to kind of test out and see if one of those would work. And so I was going to just go through an example here. So this is just a crosstab of the sales. And so what we're going to do is keep the sales like that. And then we're going to put in the index, again, like we did before, label. And so what we want in this case, I flipped around a little. So we want to get the percent that each category contributes to each of these regions. So first I'm going to basically figure out how do I want the count to look. So in this case, I know I wanted to count going up across each row and then restart again. So when your view is simpler, I think Tableau does a pretty good job of being smart and figuring out. And as just a quick note, Tableau does recently added that show calculation assistance. So it does some similar things, but there's some more complex table calculations where I still use my trick. And so basically if we did table down, you can see that it's not counting it the way that we wanted to. So we're gonna stay with table across. And so now we can move the index and basically apply the same exact um, thing to the same exact computation and settings to the sum of sales. So we want the percent of total, and then we want to do compute using table across. So we're just making sure that that looks right, and it is. So I am going to just quickly go through the more complex examples. So this is, I think, where a lot of trouble starts, where you start having more detailed dimensions on your view. And then, so in this example, I'm showing the volume for the profitable and unprofitable. And then we're showing how it changed over time for the different categories. So in here, you do this like Julia Child style, and this is the next stage. And this is with where I'm trying to show the growth over the growth in volume for these different categories. So I am basically using a moving average first, and then a percent difference from. And you can see that by default, Tableau set it to table across. And I have basically, this is the index set to the same setting. So we can see that it did an okay job of, the count is restarting for every profitable category, but it is, instead of starting again here at 1, it just keeps going. So, so what I am going to do, so one thing to notice is that when you have this table across here picked, you can also see here gray, even though it's grayed out, that you can see kind of what it's technically using for that. So if you were going to do specific dimensions, that is, and you have these two picked, that is exactly the same thing as table across. And so being a fan of table calculations now, I know that I need to use pane across. And you can see when I did that, that this now changed and it's recounting it every one. So that's great. I know I need to do pane across. And so then now I'm going to go in here and change these to pane across. And like magic, it works. And so I just want to show a really quick kind of example of something a little bit more advanced that I've personally used this to do something as complex as writing a like an exponential volume forecast with different window sizes, so to kind of average out a short-term average and a longer-term average. And so when you're doing that, you need to use lookup, and you need to know that the number of periods that you're telling Tableau to look back is really the right one. And so I think this is really useful in making sure you're picking the right number, and also even validating that the data is doing the right thing. And so what I did is, what you do is, instead of just index, you do 1 minus index, and then you need to set the custom sort. So to do that, you have to do specific dimensions. So I have, all the dimensions picked right here. And then what you can do is go into custom sort, and you can use a date field set to either minimum or maximum. So I set it to minimum with descending, so that it starts the count and at the last date and goes backwards. And so order date is, or any date is useful if you just set it to minimum or maximum, you're able to then use an order, a date as your measure to sort the index. And that is all of my presentation. I think I managed to get in time. I was just going to say that I am available either on Twitter, or I guess with that hashtag, if you guys want to send me questions anytime. And I am happy to answer questions either on this or any other Tableau question that you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Layla. There's been so much chatter going on in the chat box while you've been talking. Everyone's been incredibly impressed with your design skills, both in PowerPoint and on your Tableau workbook, and everyone's absolutely blown away by your poster. So everyone wants it up on their wall, framed, getting it signed. It's incredible. You've done such a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tim, I'm just wondering.
I have a printed version of it, by the way. So if anyone wants to, print a bunch, I am happy to contribute to that.
That's awesome. So we've got just lots of feedback coming through saying, great work. Jennifer Hunter, yeah, the poster view is what you can kind of see at the moment on the screen. And in actual fact, if you go to Layla's Twitter account, she's got a link to the Tableau workbook, and from there you can start to download the picture to create the poster printout, so that you can pop it up on the wall and never have to really remember what you need to do with table calcs again.
That's right. So I do have 2 versions of this. I had published this a while ago. Actually, I gave this a smaller version of this talk to our Phoenix user group. So there are 2 of these workbooks, but I just published a second version earlier today that has the actual example starters in it. So if you want to kind of mess around and try it out.
Definitely. I'm pretty sure you're going to get a few hits on your Tableau public profile for that.
Okay, great.
And do we have any questions for Layla, or is everyone just a bit gobsmacked?
I think Rob had a question about would you run into problems specifying panes when you move the pills? Calcs by specific dimensions would avoid this, is what he's wondering.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Is the question how to add more dimensions to the pane?
I don't know. There's a few different chats going back. Sharad saying he's learnt the hard way that he's had to do that.
Okay.
Oh.
So Rob, I'm happy to kind of chat with you offline, or through messaging or something, to figure out if I can get the answer for you. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, he's like, yeah, let's connect offline.
Okay.
Well, gosh, I mean, that was so amazing. It's just, I think everybody's like, wow. Renee's like, that's a tough one to follow up.
Well, I'll take this chance to say I really am appreciative to the community and for you guys to do this. I am probably speaking of posters, the poster definition of an introvert, and I think just getting more involved in my local community with a local user group, and going to conference, and also getting a little more involved on Twitter. Like, I don't think I would have been up to the emotional challenge of doing this presentation if it wasn't for having that community support. So
well, you've done an absolutely amazing job. I mean, the way that you've used color to describe what's happening in the table calcs is incredible. The composition blows me away. It just really makes it look spectacular. We have a question that's come through on the Q&A for you, wondering whether you can share a little bit more about your group, United by Data.
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. So
thanks, Anne Jackson.
So Anne and me started this group. We had both gone to the Women Plus Data event at the last conference, and we're kind of texting back and forth to each other, like just being really inspired and wanting to do something like that. And so when Chloe and Britt put out that challenge, we decided that we had to do something, but we weren't sure exactly what. And so we started this group, and we really are trying to focus it on having small groups so that it's really like a conversation, because as an introvert, I know I always had I was apprehensive of going up to people at the normal user groups and talking to them. And so we wanted to do that, and we wanted to also kind of make sure that it's just about having both men and women be kind of part of the cause. And so we've had a few meetings here, and then we're actually really excited to have our next meeting be a interactive, basically a resume workshop, but for interactive dashboard resumes. And so if you are in the Phoenix area, it's at the end of September.
That's fabulous. And I really like the just the tweak on the name as well, United by Data. I think that's a fabulous thing, to put yourselves out there. I'm an extrovert myself, so I don't quite understand the struggles sometimes that introverts have, particularly going along to conferences. But recently I was at the Tableau Data Day Out down in Melbourne, and we had a really interesting keynote speaker. His name's Dr. Jason Fox, and he suggested to all the introverts out there at conferences where you're surrounded by so many different people that the way to get around it, if you just need some time out, is actually to walk around the floor, but walk with purpose, because no one will stop you along the way.
That's a good tip. Yes, yes, that conferences are definitely challenging, but also fun.
We have a question from Brittany, who says, your United by Data group sounds amazing. Can you come to DC and run the same meeting?
If there's a ticket in there for me, I would love to come to DC. I've never been to DC. I'm from I grew up in the Boston area, and so I always, but now I live in Arizona, and I've always wanted to go to DC. So
I feel like Brittany can make that happen. and we have people donating their Southwest points. I think we can make that happen somehow.
See, this community is awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty special.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Layla. Truly, you killed it. You just did phenomenal. Everything about this was just fantastic. And I know folks are going to be picking your brain for more information or to rely on you as a good resource. So thank you so much for that.
I'm happy to do that.
And now you get to relax as an introvert. I can, take a deep breath and you're done.
I've got just one last thing coming through on the Twitter feed at the moment. So Anthony from Slalom, who's one of our ambassadors, he says, I tweeted out the poster copy, and he says, this viz should be preloaded in every Tableau install for teams to reference. Nice work, Layla.
All right.
Wow, that's great.
Thank you.